single Republican, I don't mean to be political here, Mr. Chairman, has received PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. Are they all corrupt as well?
And I'm telling you, the American Heart Association has been co-opted by the food
Everybody but you, Senator. But you know what? When you ran for president, we have a corrupt campaign finance system. Maybe you will agree with me on that. Okay, you were running for president, you got $1.5 billion behind it. You received $300,000 from people, not from the industry, people in it, as I did, from individuals. You corrupt. President Trump got $3 million. Every Republican.
This may look like a heated policy disagreement, but it's actually a referendum on trust inside American governance. What's really being tested here is whether institutions can claim neutrality in a system where money, influence, and authority constantly intersect. This raises broader questions about how expertise is validated, how dissent is framed, and whether public confidence can survive permanent suspicion. In this video, we'll break down how a clash over science turned into a confrontation about power, and why that matters far beyond this hearing.
President Trump, who I don't usually agree with, called COVID vaccines, quote, one of the greatest miracles in the history of modern-day medicine that saved tens of millions of lives worldwide. Scientific community agrees with Trump. Lancet study found that it prevented almost 20 million deaths during their first year of use. Secretary Kennedy, are President Trump and the medical community right, or do you still believe that the COVID vaccine was, quote, the deadliest vaccine ever made?
No, first of all, I didn't say that. I said that in terms of affairs reports a while ago. I've said today, I think that President Trump should get the Nobel Prize.
So who's right? Is Trump in the medical community right, or are you right?
President Trump did an extraordinary piece of leadership.
Is he right or wrong? Did COVID save millions of lives?
As I said, he got Americans back to work. At that time, that particular vaccine, which perfectly matched the virus that was circulating then, and I have no idea how many lives it saved, but it saved quite a few.
What I find a little bit weird in this discussion, I'm hearing it over and over again this morning, Mr. Chairman, is we've got the entire medical community on one side. You got the AMA representing hundreds of thousands of doctors, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Public Health Association. All of these organizations are telling us that COVID vaccine and vaccines in general are safe and effective. You are casting doubt on that. Who are who are the organizations that are agreeing with you and casting aspersions on vaccines?
The primary advisors are Marty McCary, Jay Bhattacharya, Dr. Oz, Vinay Prasad.
So you got a few doctors who agree with you, and I'm giving you the name.
Not a few doctors. What you're talking about is there's a big difference, Senator, between established science and the scientific establishment, which has been co-opted by the pharmaceutical industry.
So you're telling the American people that the American Medical Association, representing hundreds of thousands of people, have been co-opted and that they should not trust their doctors. And the American Academy of Pediatrics, and by the way, just for the record, every single Republican, I don't mean to be political here, Mr. Chairman, has received PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. Are they all corrupt as well?
And I'm telling you, the American Heart Association has been co-opted by the food industry.
Everybody but you, Senator. But you know what? When you ran for president, we have a corrupt campaign finance system. Maybe you will agree with me on that. Okay, you were running for president, you got $1.5 billion behind it. You received $300,000 from people, not from the industry, people in it, as I did, from individuals. You corrupt. President Trump got $3 million. Every Republican got corporate PAC money for the pharmaceutical industry. Democrats as well. Everybody is corrupt, but you? Is that what we're looking at? I don't think so. And I think the issue now...
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, I think you do know what I'm talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The issue is every time anyone disagrees with you...
Are you saying the pharmaceutical industry was supporting my presidential campaign?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the pharmaceutical industry is a greedy institution which is charging us the highest prices in the world. They are pervasive. But to suggest that every institution, the AMA, the pediatrics people, is corrupt because they disagree with you is an insult to the American people.
Listen, people disagree with me all the time. I have arguments in my agency, heated arguments every day with Jay Bhattacharya, with Marty McCary, with Dr. Oz.
You have given me the names of a few people. I have given you the names of organizations representing hundreds of thousands of doctors and scientists. I yield, Mr. President.
Senator Tillis.
What we just witnessed in that exchange was not simply a disagreement over medical policy or scientific interpretation. It was a rare, raw moment where two long-standing political figures collided over something deeper: trust, power, and who gets to define truth in America. When Senator Bernie Sanders leaned forward and demanded an answer, asking whether everyone was corrupt except the man sitting in front of him, the hearing room shifted. This was no longer about studies or institutions. It was about legitimacy, about authority, about whether Americans should place their faith in vast established systems or in individuals who claim those systems have lost their moral compass. On one side of the exchange stood Sanders, invoking institutions that have shaped public health for generations, organizations representing hundreds of thousands of professionals, networks built on consensus, peer review, and decades of accumulated credibility. To him, these bodies represent the collective judgment of science itself, imperfect, but grounded in process and accountability. When he listed their names, he wasn't just citing authority, he was defending the very idea of institutional trust. On the other side stood Robert F. Kennedy Jr., pushing back against that premise entirely. His argument was not that science is wrong, but that the structure surrounding it has been compromised. That the scientific establishment, in his view, is not the same as science itself. It was a distinction meant to challenge the foundation of modern governance, the assumption that large systems, by virtue of their size and history, deserve automatic confidence. And that is where this moment matters. Because this clash exposed a growing fracture in American life, a widening gap between institutional authority and public belief, between systems designed to serve the many and individuals who claim those systems no longer can. Sanders framed skepticism as dangerous, a threat to coherence, to shared reality. Kennedy framed skepticism as necessary, a defense against complacency and influence. Neither man was speaking in abstractions. Sanders pointed to real organizations, real professionals, real data. Kennedy pointed to real incentives, real money flows, and real questions about independence. And when Sanders pressed him, asking whether everyone else must be compromised if they disagree with him, it was a moment of moral confrontation. Not just who is right, but who do we believe? That question echoes far beyond this hearing room, because leadership in a democratic system depends on trust. Trust that institutions act in good faith. Trust that dissent is weighed, not silenced. Trust that power is exercised transparently. When that trust erodes, hearings like this become less about policy and more about legitimacy itself. What made this exchange so striking was how quickly it escalated from disagreement to disbelief. Sanders, visibly frustrated, defended the integrity of organizations he sees as cornerstones of public life. Kennedy, equally firm, rejected the notion that consensus alone equals truth. Each man was speaking to a different audience and to a different vision of America. One vision says progress comes from collective expertise, slowly refined and broadly applied. The other says progress requires constant challenge, even if that means standing alone against the majority. One emphasizes stability. The other warns of stagnation. One fears chaos, the other fears complacency. And somewhere in the middle is the American public, watching two powerful voices argue over who deserves their confidence. This is why moments like this matter more than scripted statements or prepared remarks. Because when the talking points fall away, we see the real tension driving modern politics. Not left versus right, but system versus skeptic. Institution versus individual, consensus versus conscience. Sanders wasn't just defending organizations, he was defending the idea that large, imperfect systems can still serve the common good. Kennedy wasn't just criticizing those systems, he was voicing a broader cultural unease, the feeling that power has drifted too far from accountability. Neither position exists in a vacuum. Both reflect genuine concerns. And both carry consequences. If institutions are beyond question, they risk losing public confidence entirely. If institutions are dismissed outright, society risks losing shared standards altogether. The balance between those extremes is fragile, and moments like this reveal just how strained that balance has become. As the exchange ended, with voices raised and patience thin, what lingered was not a clear answer, but a clear warning. A reminder that democracy depends not only on debate, but on a shared willingness to listen, on the ability to argue fiercely without tearing apart the foundations that allow disagreement to exist in the first place. This wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was a mirror held up to a nation wrestling with who to trust, how to decide, and what happens when certainty fractures. And that is why these hearings matter. Not because they settle every question, but because they expose the fault lines shaping our future. If you believe transparency matters, If you believe accountability matters. If you believe these moments deserve careful attention beyond the headlines, support our work. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA